Namaskar Bharat. I'm Anuraag Saxena talking to you about Kartavya Bhaava. Now, before I get started, I'd like to do a small exercise, a voting exercise with you guys, given that we are India's oldest and largest democracy. I'd like you to keep your left hands ready. So if you're holding purses, phones, whatever, please set them down. Raise your left hand if you think India should have a uniform civil code, the same law for every citizen. Keep it raised, yeah? Raise your left hand if you think Bharat should have an unbiased and answerable media. Or that merit should matter. Right? Oh wow, that's 90%. Raise your hands if you think women should have equal rights as men. Oh, many more hands. Raise your hands if you think men should have equal rights as women. Right? Now keep your hands raised, please. Keep your left hands raised. Please don't bring them down if you've raised it for any of these questions. Now, with your left hands raised, raise your right hand and please do this honestly. If you have set a target date by when you will achieve this objective of yours, if you have set a target date how you will achieve this objective, or if you've garnered resources, money, political will, etc., or if you have a project plan. Now, if you look around you, there's about 90-95% left hands raised, about 10-20% right hands raised. Thank you so much for participating. This is the story of how we raised our right hand after many left hands were raised for decades on end. Over centuries, Bharat has been subject to a lot of destructions, especially of its religious symbol and its cultural symbols. All these pictures are way too familiar. A lot of murtis and heritage objects that get stolen from Bharat are exported and sold for millions of dollars across the world. If you look at this very interesting graph, look at the bottom left of the screen. These are the imports of cultural property in the US, and not very surprisingly, more than half the imports of cultural property, so these are murtis, statues, idols, crucifixes, what have you, come from India, not from Syria and Libya and other war-torn areas. Right? I call it institutionalized kleptomania. The world has normalized that, hey, if I'm a white man, I had a gun, you didn't have a gun, I'll take what was yours, just because it looks much prettier than what I could make back home. For those of you who are interested in psychology or psychiatry, this is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, DSM-5, you can look it up. And kleptomania is recognized globally as a disorder. What we're dealing with today as Bharat is our symbols, our heritage seems to be victims of institutionalized kleptomania as represented through museums and private collections. What was the problem we had at hand? For decades, we had a lot of research, but no results. For decades, there was a lot of outrage, as I see on many other causes today, some of which that I've mentioned. There's a lot of outrage, but there's barely any outcomes. There's a lot of whining, but there's no winning, right? And when we set up the India Pride project, we said we have to find a way to change that, right? Because of this whining and outrage, all we had were empty faith centers or temples or forts or what have you. And pujaris prayed to empty garbhagrihas where murtis used to reside in their living being. The solution when we set this up 10-12 years back was to say, look, there is great research, but we have to augment that great research. We have to augment the passion that people feel about our lost heritage with advocacy domestically, which means our governments, our babus, our system needs to understand or reprioritize this issue as important. And we need to change the narrative internationally. Anandji gave me a line years back, which I use today. We were out passing a very simple idea that history belongs to its geography. It's a simple idea. It is so intuitive, a child would understand it, but somehow the world doesn't seem to understand it. Right? In the last many years, I won't get into who did it, how we did it, etc., etc. I'm just going to quickly talk you through some of the raising of the right hand and what that looked like. As you can see, a bunch of questions have been asked in Parliament. The font size is too small, but you can see not just members of the Bharatiya Janata Party, but members of the Congress, the Telugu Desam Party, and AIDMK and other regional parties supporting the idea that, hey, when are our gods going to come back home? When are our heritage going to come back home? 6-7 years back, a bill was introduced in Parliament that would allow the trading of murtis and heritage objects. Right? At that point of time, when it was open for public, let me clarify this. A bill was proposed to be introduced in Parliament. At that point of time, myself and Sai Deepak, who was here earlier, responded to that bill point by point by point by point and submitted it and made sure that it reaches, just hold on to the numbers, 6,000 lawmakers across the country at the center and at each state. And said, listen, this is not done. You cannot create a marketplace for our heritage. It wasn't meant for individuals. It was meant for communities. I cannot buy it. I cannot sell it. Nor can anybody else. Right? You'll be very happy to know that while the bill was put up on the website to be placed in Parliament, it was later withdrawn and never put up for voting. As another example of raising the right hand, this was done by our team in the UK. These are museums in London, British Museum and V&A. Our London team went to the museum with little speech bubbles, and this is the younger generation, which is why I'm so happy when I see students at the back of the audience here, because I think we guys have one leg in the grave, right? Now, this is how the younger people protest, right? It's difficult to find 50, 100 people to come out on the road. These guys printed out little speech bubbles, put it in front of murtis who we consider living objects after a prana pratishtha, and said, help, I'm kidnapped. How did I get here? Right? And so on and so forth. And if you have friends, cousins in the UK, you should ask them, this went crazy viral. It went viral to the extent that when the British Museum put out a simple tweet saying that, hey, here is a murti of Vishnu and Hari, of Vishnu and Shiva, they were met by amazing amount of resistance on Twitter, right? Hundreds and thousands of people saying that, listen, what you guys are doing, it's just not moral, it's just not legitimate, right? We had even people who could not spell thieves calling them thieves. Right? In the end, they had to put out a clarification saying, not everything in our museum was looted, right? Which is a very big change from the time they were refusing to even come on the table to have a conversation, right? Over the years, we have a whole bunch of media that has spoken about us, but here is why this slide is important. We tend to divide media between left-wing and right-wing and international and domestic or whatever. It doesn't matter if it's the Washington Post or the BBC, or Swarajya, or Op India, or Sunday Guardian, or whatever. What's important is everybody today supports this cause, which is very different from other causes that we seem to believe in, where we get excited by polarization, by othering, by tu meme, right? Being able to get people together to support a cause, I think, is the big victory which we're lacking on the bunch of causes we believe in. That Senator Bill Keating, who proposed Bill HR 2285, in the US, that was very critical to us, and we've engaged with it very strongly. Bang in the middle of the Hillary and Trump polarization, where Republicans and Democrats weren't able to see eye to eye. This bill was passed in the US. And look at how red and blue states are in the US. There's zero overlap. This bill was passed 415 to 0, right? People across ideological aisles got together and say, look, this is the right thing to do, this is the decent thing to do, and that is what you get once you're able to change a narrative. And I'm so proud that our team was able to do that. For those who are interested, you might note this down, scan the QR code, whatever. There's a beautiful documentary made by Nikhil Singh Rajput. It's called Blood Buddhas. It's a 30-minute documentary which won the first runner-up award at the Chicago Film Festival, which kind of documents the larger cause through the lenses of global experts. Now, before we get into cause, globe, blah, 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 How many of you can identify where this map is from? Just yell it out. I'm not like Shantanu. I don't mind you yelling. Absolutely. This is from Kashi. And here is the story of Annapurna Mata. Annapurna Mata, the goddess of food, prosperity, health, was stolen from Kashi, forcefully taken to Canada, discovered there by a young artist called Divya Mehra. And here is what happens. Just so you know, there were only 13 heritage objects that India got back between 1947 and 2013. Here is how things have changed. Canada, now because the narrative has changed, because there's a new normal, so to speak, Canada offered this murti back, which was welcomed in Bharat, in Delhi. As you can see there, that's the Cabinet Minister of Culture and the State Minister of Culture welcoming the murti back. It was sent on a Shobha Yatra, 5 days, 18 districts, 1,000 kilometers, and look at how people of faith have come out to welcome their Mata, their goddess, home. And the Punarstapna and Pran Pratishtha was done by Yogi Adityanath ji back in the home where Mata belonged. This is not one-off. Compared to 13 in 65 years, thanks to the peerless effort of the current government, thanks to the peerless effort of our Prime Minister, we have over 500 murtis that have come back. I am so grateful that the Prime Minister has honored this cause by making this as a part of his stated geopolitical agenda, where he personally receives these murtis and objects back from various heads of state. But I'm here to talk about something else. What is the message for all of us? Or what has been my own learning through the process? You saw 5 or 6 things that work. Believe you me, when you are in uncharted territory where 5 things work, there are 95 that don't work, which I'll talk about at some other point. Right? The difference between mans and primates is what? We're genetically very, very similar. The difference between a man and a primate is that all other forms of life react to the world around them. Human beings reshape the world around them. I'm here to talk about Kartavya Bhag and ask you to stop reacting, but start reshaping. It sounds like a small difference, but it can make a world of a difference. You know, somebody somewhere up in the sky or the multiverse, depending on whether you believe Sanatan Dharma or the Marvel universe, somebody somewhere decided that we could be the only race on this planet that can give shape to the dreams. And I would want us to be very cognizant of that and take that responsibility very seriously. Now, I like jibing and making fun once in a while, but let me also tell you that this is a very lonely journey, right? If you choose to move from reacting to reshaping, it is going to be a very lonely journey where most of the people won't even know who you are or what you do. There's no glory. It's not fashionable to do what we do. Most of the people don't even know about us. You will have people, sometimes from outside, sometimes from within your team, your friends, who will steal credit, who will slander you, right? And you'll be very tempted to give up. When you do, remember this ugly face saying, do not give up, right? You might feel you'll have a billion reasons to not move from reaction to reshaping, right? There'll be many excuses to stop, but please don't. Another message, we as Indians tend to believe that somebody who's up on stage knows more than somebody who's in the audience, right? So consider this a peer-to-peer conversation between somebody who's sharing his experiences, whether it may or may not apply to you. Right? It was very important for me to recognize that no one can care about your cause more than you can. Right? No one. And why am I telling you this? I meet so many people who say, look, I voted for so-and-so. Now it's his job to be my personal concierge. Why are you not bringing Uniform Civil Code? Why are you not bringing, the Right to Education Act equally to blah, 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 and so on and so forth? Please remember, if you abdicate your responsibility to the state, you also abdicate your rights to the state. Right? Suresh ji, who's in the audience, told this to me once. You need to ask yourself, what gives you the right to have a right? Unless you take on a corresponding responsibility, you do not have a right to a right. Another message that has worked well for us, and hopefully you all should try it out as well. A lot of us like to speak. Katha Kalakshepam, conversations, Twitter, Insta, Facebook, etc., etc. And like, share and subscribe is very, very tempting. Right? And we tend to fall for that. I would also urge you to look beyond just saying what you need to and ensuring that you actually get heard. And there is a big difference. Right? The big difference is, where does the responsibility to get heard lie? Right? Today, we imagine that we put something out in the universe, doesn't matter how you say it. And it is somebody else's job to hear and deliver on our agenda. I'd say no, make that a part of your agenda. Create pressure groups. Reach out to policymakers. Land up at a parliamentarian's office with 100 people. There's no way he won't hear you or she won't hear you. Engage in public consultations like that bill you saw earlier. Right? People read these things. Please respond. Please participate. If need be, get out on the street and protest. As unfortunate as it is, as against as I am personally to it, reality is that loud, obnoxious protests are the only way to get heard in India. And you should not shy away from engaging in that. Groups on the side of adharma are able to get together and fight for adharma. Why can't groups fighting for dharma get together and fight for dharma? Speaking of fighting, I have this question for all of you. Many people spoke about, the fact that we're in a civilizational battle, the fact that different people have different roles, etc., etc. But just for a second, imagine a simple false binary. It's our team. We say that, our ancients have written a lot and etc., etc. There's a lot of knowledge in our Indic knowledge systems, blah, blah. We seem to have 99 Chanakyas, but one Yodha. Their team has one Chanakya, but 99 Yodhas. When the battle comes to your head, who do you think will win? Will your 99 Chanakyas win, or will their 99 fighters win? Right? You have a moral responsibility who you edify. Right? Alongside thinkers, authors, etc., etc., you need to let the other three varnas also know that they matter. You need to get doers to understand that they have support, that they are inspiring others. Right? Otherwise, what you're doing is creating a new varna vyavastha, a new caste system, right? Which will only encourage less and less doers. And unfortunately, I've seen a lot of that in my own time. Before I conclude my talk, just a couple of personal takes, right? If you are able to get over your fascination with responding and you choose to reshape, right, you will have to be very stoic, very indifferent about it. I've read this beautiful line somewhere which said, not wanting something is the same as having it. Remember, not wanting something is the same as having it, right? When you want fame or position or validation or money or book deals or whatever it is, you are left wanting. You do not have any power because, you're desperately seeking something. If you don't want any of these things, if you don't care any about of these things, if you're indifferent, then you already have them. That is your superpower. I would like each of you to look beyond temptations into saying, hey, what do I need to do today? Right? As Swami Vivekananda said, ask nothing, want nothing in return, give what you have to give. It will come back to you, but do not think of that now. In fact, I will add on, even if it doesn't come back to you, so what? Your family will still love you, your friends will still hang out with you. Let somebody else fight for glory, steal your credit, doesn't matter. What we need to finally get over, English is my second language, so please correct me if I'm kind of wrong. What we finally need to get over is our lost glory narrative, where we say, oh, our temples were great, our Ayurveda was great, our Krida Kshetra was great, and spirituality was great, and the whole Sone ki Chidiya narrative. I'd like to leave you with a very simple thought, right? Our ancestors did whatever they did. That's their credit. My question is, what are you doing today? That's the only question that matters. Namaskar.